What is up, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. Thanks for tuning into these. Thanks for liking them. Thanks for sharing them with friends, anyone in the civil engineering world. We're here to help you on that journey. So thanks for checking us out. And if you need help with your exams, getting those things passed, check us out at civilengineeringacademy.com. Today, I bring a special guest on, Byron Tang. He's out of California. He's got a ton of initials after his last name. He's a PE, he's a TE, he's a PTOE. And if you are in the world of transportation engineering, you're going to know what all of those mean. But if you have interest in learning more about transportation engineering and specifically diving in to become more specialized, then this is going to be a great episode for you as we talk about how to get those additional initials after your last name. But Byron is a rock star working out of California as a transportation engineer. I wanted to just talk to him about how to become more specialized and the projects that he's working on. I think you're going to enjoy this one. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up. We're going to get to Byron's interview. And I also want to mention that he has a YouTube channel. We'll make sure we link that. He has a ton of great information on there. If you're interested in following along, go give him a follow as well. So without further ado, let's get to our interview with Byron. All right. We are rocking and rolling. Byron, thank you for joining me today on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of a rock star in the transportation world, so I wanted to connect with you and kind of talk about that. So I always start these out, though, just briefly talk about your own background and kind of what led you into this world of transportation engineering.
Okay. Well, I guess I can start from the beginning. I grew up in Sacramento, California. I lived a pretty ordinary middle-class lifestyle in suburbia. And when I was growing up, I had many, many different interests. So I really didn't know what I wanted to be until I started high school. And that's when I really got into music. So I was playing the piano a little bit, but not that serious. And then I got serious in high school. And so I spent most of my high school practicing and getting good and trying to, because in order to make it to music school, you kind of have to audition and you have to get in the music program in the college. So I was
playing
piano.
Piano.
So yeah, I was a piano player. I really wanted to get into composition. So that's what I was able to do. I auditioned and I got into not like a really good school or anything. I went to state school in their music program, and about a year and a half or 2 years in, that's when I had a feeling it wasn't going where I wanted. I was more into composing, but I noticed the program was really performance focused. And, it came to the realization that I'm not like the top of the cream of the crop. And that kind of, made me think that I needed to pivot and, change majors. And that's when kind of I started thinking about engineering in general. And I know there's a lot of different engineering, but civil stood out to me because it seemed like the job prospects were good in the sense that, the work was needed. A lot of like infrastructure work, is needed. It helps society. I knew I wasn't going to be rich being a civil engineering major probably. But there were enough fields in civil engineering like transportation, water, structures that, I thought, I'll probably find one that I like. So I chose civil engineering really not knowing what I was getting into. And it was pretty scary at the time. I have there's some people in my family who were engineers, so it's not like it was like completely new. But I made that pivot, and it turned out to be a pretty good decision because I made that decision before 2008, before all that the economy just completely crashed. Mm-hmm. And I think back, I love music, but probably wasn't going to get a good job as a music major. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, that's kind of how I got into civil engineering. And from there, it was pretty scary through that time because graduating through college is probably the height of the pandemic. Couple years in, I was applying pretty much to any job that was available. So I had no idea what field of civil engineering I was going to be into. until, I was given a chance with County Santa Clara, which is in the Bay Area here in California. And they have a traffic engineering group. And it was a very competitive interview process. And but I was able to be one of the 3 candidates to get in. And that's kind of where the whole traffic engineering transportation took off. And, I've loved it since. But, going before that, I had no idea I was going to get into transportation. It was, a lot of it was question mark until it actually happened.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there a little bit, I think, for people. So what advice would you give to people that may want to pivot just like you did? Because going into some music major or composition to engineering, I can see how those related, but they're also like very different. You're using a creative mind and maybe less of a engineering mind. I don't know. What tips would you have for someone that may be considering making a pivot?
It's not an easy question to answer, and a lot of it has to do with, I'm not a believer of just like randomly picking things. Like, you have to go by some of your inclinations. Before picking civil engineering, I knew, like, I liked math. I liked learning. Music theory kind of is mathematical in a sense. I always did well in science classes. In math classes, I was pretty good. So I knew going into civil engineering or any engineering, I wasn't going to like struggle a lot. So you kind of have to, you should choose something, you can have a good chance of being proficient in. And then also something that you should have some interest in. I'm not really a believer of like, you have to follow your, like, a diehard passion. Like that's what I try to do with music. But at least something that you won't view as, this is my job, I'm just going to go, and it's not really anything other than that. That mentality of just, it's a job. To me, it's like, if you're interested in something, you'll be excited to work in it. And that's kind of the feeling I have with engineering. It's, I get up every day, and even though, I work sometimes long hours, it's energizing sometimes to be working on like really cool projects and doing this kind of work. So I think it's a mixture of, you have to have some interests, and then your inclinations, like you should be good at math if you're going into engineering, or not. You should, you shouldn't feel like it's your worst subject. But then a lot of it is luck. We don't control what the economy is like when you graduate. You don't know what can happen in 10 years with AI and all that kind of stuff. So some of it, it's out of your control. And I would just give advice that don't stress you out too much trying to optimize and perfect everything, because you can't. It's just, there's just so many factors.
Makes sense. So now that you're an engineer and doing transportation projects, how do you support your other passion of playing the piano?
It's hard, especially that I have a lot of interests. So I have some side hobbies too, and piano, kind of like I can maybe get an hour a day if it's a really good day. But if not, I can play. Like, I have a son, and he likes playing along with me in the piano. He's very young though. He'll just sit there and hit the keys randomly. But I see it. He enjoys it, and that inspires me to at least play when he's around, so he can maybe pick some of it up. So I kind of have to kind of fit it in where it fits in the schedule when I'm watching my son and things like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you describe some of these other things that you're doing on the site as well, just so others are aware of all the stuff going on in your world?
Yeah. Well, so my son's about 2.5, so he takes up pretty much all my time. I know you have kids, so you probably know, going through the terrible twos. But I also, I do try to make YouTube videos. I've had a channel. I started that during the pandemic, and that does take a lot of my time. Like, you have to do research about all the topics you do if you do video, or you plan out, if you're in a vlog, you kind of have to plan out like what you're going to talk about or where, so that takes up time. And then with work, yeah, raising a child, I think that's enough. I do play soccer on the weekends, so
busy.
I exercise. I also play recreational soccer.
That is so cool. Well, I know it's a challenge to not only be an engineer in California, but you have to pass your PE exam, which is additional requirements. You also have on your name, could you describe what a TE is and a PTOE is? Because I think there's a lot of individuals that may not know what those stand for.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Happy to. So TE is actually stands for the traffic engineer license, and that is only offered, I believe, California and maybe one other state. I'm not 100% sure what the other state is, but California offers a traffic engineer's license, and it's basically very similar to the PE in terms of how you would apply for it. You apply to the state, but the exam format is very similar, like the amount of questions, the level of complexity of questions, but it's all based off of traffic engineering type questions. So in terms of difficulty, it's actually pretty hard, right up there with PE, just a more narrower field, right? So you're allowed to take
Specialized.
Yeah, more specialized. Kind of like there's a structural engineer's license also. But the TE is in that way similar, but it doesn't have as much power as a structural engineer's license. More of a license of name only. It doesn't have like signing powers like the PE or the SE.
Could I bug you about that a little bit? What would encourage someone who has a PE license want to get their TE license?
I've seen it matter definitely during like I see it when there's job postings, especially the government will actually say some positions they'll actually call out the TE as well as the PE, and if you have both, it definitely makes you stand out. And knowing that I took it, there are probably people out there who don't value it as much, but I took it. I know the difficulty of it, so when I see someone who has taken it, like I know what they've gone through, to get that TE. So yeah, it's debatable. Like, is it really as good as a PE or other ones? But to me, there is some value because you do see it on job postings, especially government ones, and it does take some effort to get it.
So that can lead to additional career opportunities, it sounds like, and probably, which leads to additional probably salary as well, or benefits there, I guess. But
yeah, it can hurt, definitely. And then I think I have a PTOE, which stands for Professional Traffic Operations Engineer. So that is offered by like not the government, by a different organization. And I think if you're involved in the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is a professional organization, they really kind of put this one out there. Like, it's additional kind of certification you can get to show you have even more specialty with transportation type knowledge. So there's also others called like road safety professional that are offered by that organization. So I have the PTOE, which is just more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you got a lot of initials after the name, so I wanted to make sure people understood kind of what not only what they are, but what's out there for engineers that head into transportation and kind of the doors that are open to them if they head into that world. So, well, that's awesome. So let's jump into what you do now and maybe describe a favorite project or something that you've worked on that's been significant in your life.
Well, okay, yeah, I work for the City of Hayward. I'm a senior transportation engineer, and what I do is I'm kind of like we have like in the city there's an engineering group, but there's also like a transportation group. So the transportation group is more, to me, it's like on the traffic engineering side, where we kind of are really involved with the operations, maintenance, and like the planning and design. But when it comes to construction, we don't do a lot of those big projects. The engineering group handles that delivery. But I have to wear many hats as a traffic/transportation engineer. So for instance, if someone calls in about a speed hump, I may be involved with that. Going for grants to get funding for transportation projects, I'm very involved with that. We have a lot of safety projects we need to do to improve traffic safety. For example, one grant I was involved with getting was the federal government has a Safe Streets for All grant, and that's a huge grant program because nationally we're trying to improve road safety because there's so many fatalities in the U.S. So the city, we won a multi-million-dollar planning grant to study all of our arterial roads, our major arterial roads, and to look into what we can do to improve safety there. So we just got that grant last year. It's going to be starting up very soon. So I'm really excited, and I'm going to be very involved with that.
That's awesome. It sounds like you got a ton going on. I'm sure there's a lot of tools that you use in the position that you're in. How do you keep up or develop, new skills or stay on top of the knowledge that seems to be always rapidly evolving in this field?
Yeah, and this is actually something. This is the enjoyable part for me. I'm always I feel like I'm naturally curious, and I like to learn. And so I just always have like a lot of hobbies or things I want to learn and get better. So I think one way is you have to stay connected. And one way that I've been able to do that is, I joined a professional organization, Institute of Transportation Engineers, which I mentioned earlier. And through there, I've met so many people. And what they have is, there's events you can attend monthly, locally. But then they also have these like regional events. And sometimes they do that like yearly. So there's just a lot of opportunities to network and meet people. And from there, you hear like what other people are doing, whether they're presenting about a project they're doing. And then you make that connection and you find out, you really expand your horizons of like what's really out there. Because there's so much being done. And it's pretty amazing. So one way is staying connected, putting yourself out there, meeting people, networking. And then, once you kind of are inspired by what you hear from people, then like, if I hear something really interesting at this event, then I'll go back and start studying, and I'll start looking at the research or like behind it, and I'll start doing my own homework on it. So I like doing that. And then other ways is just really just staying on top of the knowledge of there's a lot of standards out there, so I'm always watching what's like there's a certain law coming that's going to be changing like how speed limits are determined or something like that. So I'm always staying on top of that and seeing what the changes are, because it is a very fast evolving field. There's a lot of technology, so in the next month or two, there's going to be a major technology event for transportation, for the transportation industry in the Bay Area. So it's really catching those things and finding stuff on the internet. That's probably the two ways I do it.
Well, speaking of kind of challenges and new technologies, what are some of the biggest challenges you see maybe coming here in the next decade in the transportation world?
I'd say road safety, or not just road safety, but just traffic safety. As I mentioned, I was talking about safety before. The U.S. has what many see as a major traffic safety problem compared to the whole world. Our traffic fatality rates are very high for the urbanized nation and the first world country that we are. When you compare our fatality rates to some places like in Asia or in Europe. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling, like how dangerous our roads, our traffic is. So I think that's going to be a major problem to tackle, and it's not going to be easy either, because as an engineer, you kind of think the first thing I can do is, let's make the infrastructure safer. But there's just so much more also that affects traffic, because it's like a psychological thing, like because people are driving in the cars, people are walking, people are out there riding their bikes. A lot of it is the culture that we have. Like we have a different culture compared to some other nations. A lot of it is also determined by the industry. I was reading something about how, like, for some reason we like bigger and bigger cars, which actually make it less safe driving around a lot bigger cars, because it actually obstructs your vision when it comes to like seeing a pedestrian at certain situations. So a lot of these things are outside of an engineer's control. So it's going to take a lot of work from everyone to have a safer transportation culture.
Do you think, like, and eventually it sounds like self-driving cars are coming our way? Do you think, how's that going to work? Is that going to be a safer system set up?
Yeah, I believe it will. And a lot of that is still being debated. But it seems like from what we've seen so far, like there's actually, tests being done in certain areas of the U.S., including the Bay Area. It appears that there are a lot of benefits to self-driving cars, and one is safety. I mean, a lot of people do trust that, I've seen these cars driving like in person, and they drive a lot more slower and cautious than, sometimes that crazy person that you see on your commute. So, I'm a believer that it has a lot of promise, but there is a debate behind it on whether, self-driving cars are good as a whole. And that's still hotly debated. And another example of how things are changing so quickly in this industry.
It seems like there's a huge importance on, having things well marked, and demarcation and signage and striping and all of that, if we're going to have self-driving cars, because it seems like it's pulling in all that data with all this stuff. So yeah, I think we need to buckle up. We're going to be for an interesting ride in the next few years. Definitely. So Byron, what do you enjoy the most about being a senior transportation engineer?
Specifically about senior transportation engineer, I like the autonomy of being in a senior role. I've been in a senior role for a couple years now, but it's very different than like kind of like your entry level engineer or even associate level engineer, where you kind of I have a lot more autonomy on being able to like the projects I manage, and I like that. And I kind of liken it to, like, how when you're in grade school, you really can't decide anything, you're just given something to be done. and then when you're high school, you're given a little more decision, the choices in the classes you can choose. And then in college, it's even more free. And I was always that person who loved it, the next step up, because I was given more freedom. So it feels like I have that freedom when I reach the senior level. And it's not the same for everyone, but that's just my preference. And I just like just being able to have more independence when I'm working.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
If there was an engineer out there considering diving into this world of transportation engineering, what are some tips you would have for them to maybe help them get a leg up on stepping into this world?
I would say is my mentality is you kind of have to give it your all, because there is that competition aspect of, and I remember how, tough it is to get your first job, to once you graduate. You kind of have to really put your all in, as in you should really try to do things earlier. That's what I would recommend. So for example, a lot of places, a lot of colleges, including the college I went to, stress like you should try to get your EIT finished, before you graduate, or like right around when you graduate. And then that will set you up, and you really shouldn't wait a long time for your PE. I know sometimes it happens and it's out of your control, but the longer you wait for that, the more you're going to forget, and the more you're going to have to study up and relearn. And then, I didn't stop at PE. I went forward, and it's like you're always going to have to learn. And hopefully you're the kind of person who likes to learn, and it's not like you just graduate, get your license, and I'm set for the rest of my career. So the whole idea of being a lifelong learner is what I would advise. And if you chose a field that you have some interest in, it shouldn't feel like pulling out teeth. Hopefully, you should feel some curiosity in wanting to learn and get better. So that's what I would say.
Definitely makes sense. Well, on our podcast, we occasionally publish things about the ASCE salary reports and things of this nature. And I know it ranges vastly among the country and depending on where you're living. But would you have maybe a ballpark idea of maybe what a starting engineer would make in this field?
Oh yeah, I live in the Bay Area, so my idea of salaries may be pretty high, but I'll say outside of the Bay Area, I think around maybe 75, 80K is probably where it's around. And many years ago, that's kind of where around my starting salary was. But now it's inflated in the Bay Area. But yeah, I'd say around there is my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good. When I started, it was a lot less. So that's not too bad. Could you maybe touch on mentorship for yourself, like how important that was? I know you mentioned these societies and stuff, but as you stepped foot into this field, did you have a mentor, and how important was it to just kind of find someone that, was a step ahead of you or knew a little bit more?
Yes. And I'd say it's very important. It kind of reminds me, I remember reading a book about talking about how important mentorship is, and the author, she said, like, going through your career without a mentor is like trying to climb Mount Everest without a Sherpa or guide. Like, you could, but like, why would you? So that quote kind of stuck to me, and I would agree. I would say I had one mentor in particular who really helped show the ropes in terms of, I was say when I was younger, I was very technical oriented. Like I was very good in like knowing like standards and things like that. But I wasn't prepared to be like a senior engineer, which has kind of like, you have to have a different skill set because you're managing people. And the whole idea of becoming a manager instead of just being like, just a staff, it took me a while to understand that. And my mentor realized that, and, he gave me so much resources and guidance to be that. And, I didn't really ask for it, which is why I consider this mentor to be even more special. It's like, it's rare for someone to do that for you. Like a lot of times, you'll ask someone a question, or like someone that you're working for, and they'll happily give you the answer to it. But for someone to look ahead and to help you with like non-engineering type skills, I really needed that. And, would I be as good as an engineer right now without that mentor? Probably not. So I would say to answer, having that mentorship and that person to tell me, why it's very important to delegate, like why you have to be able to communicate and collaborate, with certain people. And like, when you're hiring people, what do you look for and things like that? Like these are non-engineering things, but they're just extremely important. Extremely important. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think having a mentor, can kind of make or break you. It kind of it can accelerate your career as you're going through it. So I think that's a great advice that you gave. Byron, this has been awesome. I've appreciated all the wisdom you've dropped here on becoming a transportation engineer, the specialties that you've dived into that others may want to dive into as well. If anybody had questions for you or they wanted to check out your YouTube channel or anything like that, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can. My YouTube is at Byron Tang, BYRONTANG. And if you look at the About Me section, there should also be ways to contact me through email. And then you can also contact me through X, or formerly Twitter, at Byron Tang TE, I believe. And then if you search for me, you probably can find me on LinkedIn, because I know many people have done that, even though I don't really publicly display my LinkedIn, but I'm happy to connect with you if you find me. So those are 3 ways you can do so.
Okay. We'll probably link some of those. Byron, you're a rock star. Thanks for jumping on and sharing all of this. I appreciate you doing it, and hopefully we'll chat in the future.
All right. Thank you, Isaac, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. See ya.
Okay.